So, you know how, as a homeowner, every now and then you've got those fire alarms. I've got them in my house, those fire detectors, smoke detectors. And every now, they always tell you to change those batteries when the clocks change twice a year. If you're one of those that does, raise your hand. Yeah, I don't either. I always wait till I hear the chirp, chirp, chirp. You know what I'm talking about? That moment where it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you're sleeping and you hear chirp, chirp, chirp. And you're like, daggone it, my battery on that fire smoke alarm's bad. You wake up out of the middle of the night. The wife rolls over and says, honey, go fix that. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. The dog's wrestling around. The kids are wrestling around. Dad, what's wrong? I hear this chirping. And everybody's up. Nobody can get back to sleep. That chirp, chirp, chirp is very annoying. And there's no way to fix it by sleeping through it. It ain't going to work. You can't sleep through chirp, chirp, chirp. You have to get up. You have to wake your butt up. You have to get halfway dressed so you don't fall somewhere, fall down some steps or on a ladder. You have to turn all the daggone lights on. God forbid the chirp, chirp, chirps in your bedroom. You say to the wife, hey, cover up your head so I can turn the light on. I got to fix the chirp, chirp, chirp. The chirp, chirp, chirp is just annoying, and it's never going to go away until you fix it. Well, I tell you that story. My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff, and for Chris Kroc. Chris is off this week and back next week. That chirp, chirp, chirp resonates today on the heels of what happened over the weekend and this last week in Washington, D.C. There's a lot of chirp, chirp, chirp going on. I'll talk about that in about 3 minutes, and I'll explain it to you. But before I get to that, I want to lead with this. Saw a release just a couple hours ago, just 2 hours ago, from the Texas Department of Emergency Management, stating that you got that hurricane that's headed towards Yucatan Peninsula. The Texas Division of Emergency Management put out a call late today to Texans who live in and around the Gulf, anywhere near the Gulf, or who are planning to visit the state's coastal communities during the 4th of July weekend. You got to keep your eye on the Gulf this weekend and through early next week. Now, the plea came today as Hurricane Beryl was moving west across the Caribbean. It's gone from, I think it was a hurricane category 5 to a 4. I'm not exactly sure what it is at this hour. But authorities asked residents and holiday travelers, and the most important point is holiday travelers. If you are planning on traveling anywhere towards the coast, just keep your eyes open. Just keep plugged into this radio station. By the way you can do that is here at News Talk 820 WBAP, great radio station. We've got an app. We built an app for our station. You can go to your smartphone right now and download that app. All you go into your app store, type in WBAP, download that app, put it on your screen. You can listen live anywhere, anytime from that app. And you can catch up on breaking news alerts. You can sign up for the notifications and catch up on what's going on. So if you're going to be outside of North Texas, if you're leaving the Dallas area here over the holiday and you're going south down towards the coastal area, or if you're on either side of Texas, anywhere around the Gulf, within probably a two-hour drive of the Gulf, you got to download that app because it could save someone's life. You've got to stay weather aware. This is a time of the year. This is a time of the week. This is the time of the month, July 4th, people kind of unplug a little bit, and they think vacations, and they think family, and 4th of July. You got to be aware there's a major hurricane out in the ocean headed this way. It's gone over Grenada. It's been very deadly, and it could potentially come into the Gulf and could potentially impact weather in and around the state of Texas and here around the Gulf. So Texas Department of Emergency Management urges Texans to take appropriate measures to ensure that this holiday weekend remains happy and safe for all. And they asking us to take time to enjoy the holiday weekend, but most importantly, be weather aware. And I agree with that. That's just smart. That's just good. Beryl is forecast to continue moving west, northwest for the next week, and Texas is now in the cone of uncertainty. That's what you always hate to hear. We are now in the cone of uncertainty. This far out, you can't predict it. You can't exactly tell where it's going to go, what's going to happen, who it's going to impact. But I know this. You don't want to be anywhere within 2 hours of 2-hour drive, 3-hour drive of the coastline, and all of a sudden wake up and find out, whoops, that thing made a turn and it's coming our way, and we got to get the heck out of here. Hurricane Beryl is forecast to impact the Yucatan Peninsula on Friday and then reemerge over the southern Gulf of Mexico early Saturday morning. That's according to the release from the Texas Department of Emergency Management. They say interests along the Texas Gulf Coast should closely monitor this system and prepare now for any potential impacts. My point to you is this. If you don't have the WBAP app, get it now. It's free. It's simple. Go to your app store, download the BAP app. You can listen to the radio off of that. You can stream it anytime, anywhere. And you can get breaking news alerts. We'll keep you up to speed as that thing moves, as well as other stories like Chirp, Chirp, Chirp. I want to get back to Chirp, Chirp, Chirp. I set it up earlier by talking a moment ago about the fact that I'm a homeowner, and when my smoke alarm in the house has a battery going bad, you know the sound. Chirp, chirp, chirp. And it happens about every 7 seconds, not every 2 or 3 seconds. And it's just annoying. It's a problem. It's not going to go away. There are just some things in life you just know is a problem, and the problem only gets worse the longer you wait. And that's one of them, the smoke detector. Well, that's happening today in Washington, D.C. That is the most dominant story. This is the stories going on right now in Washington. I've been doing talk radio, off and on for probably 12 to 15 years on a limited part-time basis. This story that started last Thursday night with the debate about Biden's mental acuities is quickly turning into more than mental acuities of running for re-election. It's turning into mental acuities of, can the man survive the office? And there have been chirps, chirps, chirps coming out of Washington all day long. This is a story. I said to Mrs. Westside Jeff last night before I came down to the studio, I said, honey, I've been doing talk radio a long time, and this story and these stories, along with what the Supreme Court has done over the last couple of days, literally are the biggest news stories I've ever been a part of as a talk show host. And I believe the Lord puts you in the right place at the right time for the right things, and I think this might be part of that. I didn't grow up wanting to be a talk guy on the radio. I just fell into it, and I fell into it because I had an opinion. I fell into it because I follow the news, I monitor the news, and when I do, I analyze it, and I find myself having an opinion. I was talking once to a program director a long time ago and sharing it, and I said to him, you got to put me on the radio sometime, and he's like, maybe we will, and he did. And the rest is history. But this is the biggest story, could potentially be the biggest political story of my lifetime, and certainly one of the biggest overall stories of my talk show lifetime also. It's a big onion. And the more you unpeel that onion, the stinkier it gets, and the more layers you find, and the dirtier it gets. I'll explain more about that on the other side of this. I'll tell you what the chirp chirp was today out of D.C. And then I want to open the phones and have a conversation about it, because to me, talk radio is a conversation with the community. It's not just about me preaching to you. It's not me just giving my opinion to you so you can say, what's Jeff think? It's about, I want to hear what you have to say. We'll get into that in about 4 minutes. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. And for Chris Crock on News Talk 820, WBAP, and now on FM at 93.3. Westside Jeff and for Chris Crock. Chris is back next week. He's taking a week off to enjoy family and friends like a lot of folks do over July 4th. I was talking top of the hour there, top of the show, about Hurricane Beryl. I took a quick look during the break. I ran out in the newsroom and took a look at the weather and looked at the path. And right now, as of the latest, the Weather Channel folks are projecting Hurricane Beryl to be in the Gulf of Mexico area on Sunday, this Sunday, July 6th at about 2 p.m. The point in Texas is some parts of Texas is now in the cone of uncertainty. So the bottom line is keep an eye on the hurricane. If you don't have the WBAP app downloaded to your phone, where you can get breaking news alerts and keep up to date on what's going on, I would highly, highly recommend it. It's a free app. Just go to your app store, download WBAP.com. You can stream the station 24/7 off the app and make it your radio. And then you can also catch up on breaking news notifications. I love getting the notifications from the station throughout the day and the night and keep me up to speed on what's going on. It's a way to do it. You can also, by the way, any show on the station, you could podcast. You can go and there's a button at the bottom of the at the app page. You can go down to the bottom and click on podcast. So if you want to listen to my show last night, Westside Jeff and for Chris Crock, you can go back and listen to it. It's a wonderful app. It really is. I know a lot of radio stations do apps. This one does it the right way. So check it out. I mentioned a moment ago, I want to get in chirp, chirp, chirp. And the chirp, chirp, chirp concept is I'm a homeowner and I've got smoke detectors in my home. And it's always the most inconvenient time that my smoke detector battery goes low. And I start hearing chirp, chirp, chirp. It's about every 7 seconds. It's always at 2 or 3 in the morning in the middle of sleeping. The kids are in bed. The dog's sleeping. The dog wakes up, starts barking. What the heck's going on? The wife says, honey, what's going on? Hopefully it's not in the bedroom, because if the chirp chirp is in the bedroom, there ain't no way about it. You're not going to sleep through it. You're going to have to get up. You got to say, honey, I'm covering up your head. I'm turning all the lights on. I'm going to get up there and fix the chirp chirp and replace the battery. And listen, it's just annoying. It's a problem. It's got to be fixed. You can't ignore it. And it's got to be done. You got to do something with it. Washington's like that now. There's a lot of breaking news out of Washington today. I want to hit some of the highlights because it's chirp chirping. That's what's going on in Washington. The first thing that stuck out to me today in Washington is, and Lori talked about this, Lori Waffenschmidt in the newsroom, my partner in crime here, and my kind of anchor on this, on what's going on in the news. You'll catch up to date with what's going on in the news. Lori actually will have a story coming up in about 10 minutes in the newscast about Democrats' responses to the Biden fallout and what's going on with the Supreme Court rulings and the immunity trial. She'll have some audio on that in about 10 minutes from today's news. So stick around for that. That's coming up in 10 minutes. Lori did a story top of the hour talking about earlier today. The judge delayed Donald Trump's hush money sentencing until September, granting former President Trump's request to weigh whether the Supreme Court's immunity ruling affects his New York criminal conviction. Now, the Supreme Court came down with that ruling yesterday, and Judge Juan Merchan ruled after the Supreme Court ruling. He decided that the sentencing that was going to be next week on Thursday, I think it is, Thursday, July 11th, he's now scheduled it and delayed it to September 18th. And that is after the Republican National Convention and about a month and a half or so before the election. That's 2 extra months as a victory for Trump, who has made a delay. Trump has made delay a real hallmark of his legal strategy. But it also comes much closer to the general election, which can be interesting depending on the events that happens between now and then. But the most important thing that Justice Juan Merchan said today is, he's the presiding judge. He said that, I think his words were, I'm looking for the notes, his words were, the sentencing would take place if such is deemed necessary. And when we talk chirp chirp of what's going on in Washington, that's a chirp chirp, because the Democrats have gone after Trump they've thrown everything at Trump they can to try to imprison him, and they haven't gotten there yet. And the Supreme Court spoke yesterday, and because of that, the sentencing, Merchan did the wise thing and said, you know what, let me review the Supreme Court ruling. Let's look at the fallout of this, the impact of that, what the Supreme Court has said. And there's a chance that all charges could be dropped. But there's also a chance they don't get dropped and he does sentence them. Time will tell. But that's a win for the Team Trump. So that happened today. If you weren't catching up on the news, Trump's the judges decided to wait to levy what happens to Trump, and that's now going to take place September 18th. That's a key date you got to remember. All right. Other news in Washington today. When we talk chirp chirp, let's talk about the chirps out of the fallout from the Biden performance last Thursday night. There's a lot about what's gone down that's really caught my ear and caught my eye. I've told you my story. The name is Jeff, Westside Jeff. I'm born and raised up in the state of Ohio. My dad was a Democrat. He was a union guy. He was a plumber. My mom was a Republican. They used to go vote together and say, let's cancel each other out. I tend to fall more on my mom's side and the right side of the aisle, but I'm not hardcore way right. I'm not center left. I'm right of center. But I'm a realist. That's what I am. I'm a realist. And I realize that governing is difficult, and governing is all about making accommodations. To me, government is designed for the people, by the people. It's not an autocracy. It's not a dictatorship. But it seems like that is now with who's in office now with Joe Biden. So today, some of the news that hit today, the Trump campaign came out today and they said that they have $285 million ready to spend on his re-election campaign. That's about $45 million more than the Biden campaign. The Trump campaign says that political persecution, which is exactly what's going on, of the Trump candidacy, political persecution that he's going through has been good for fundraising. Now, again, my name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. You want to interact with me, you pick up the phone. You can call 800-288-9227. It's 800-288-WBAP. You can also catch me across social media. I'm on X, formerly known as Twitter, and Facebook and Instagram. You can hit me up there at Westside Jeff. So Trump comes out and the campaign says today that political persecution's been good for fundraising. Is that a surprise to you? Is it? Not to me. Who in their right mind would have thought that as they're going after Trump that this might backfire and help him raise more money? It has. It's helped him raise more money. And what does that do? That just pisses the Democrats off even more. There's more out of Washington on the chirp in the news, and a lot of it's not good for Joe Biden, because there were some key people today that spoke up. Some people with big voices that get heard. I want to tell you about that after the bottom of the hour news. Coming up in 2 minutes, I got Lori talking about some of the audio from that, and we'll discuss it on the other side of her newscast. My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. I'm in for Chris Crock on News Talk 820 here on WBAP and now on 93.3 FM. So there's been a lot of chirp today in Washington. And the chirp started last Thursday night at about 11 p.m. Eastern time, right after the debate. Joe Biden was an embarrassment, and there's been a lot of chatter about that since. We'll continue that conversation. I have a strong opinion on that. In my background and within the media space, within media companies and handling political advertising, I got a little insight, and I'll share that with you coming up in just a few minutes. But some of the chirp that went on today, and the chirp is the, peeling that onion back and seeing what's going on behind the onion. The Trump campaign says it's got $285 million ready to spend for their election campaign, $45 million more than Biden campaign. And my opinion on that's pretty simple. Political persecution pays. Hell, you ought to do more of that. Democrats should empower Trump even more. Go after him more. Just allows him to make more money, collect more money for the coffers, and go out and beat Joe. The chirp today really centered around Washington, and I was really surprised and stunned of what I heard. And it was about President Biden. You see, Biden today, he visited a new emergency operations center in D.C. So he got out of the White House. He went to this new operations center. I actually stopped at home today. I was at home today just for a few minutes for lunch and turned on the news. I turned on CNN. I want to see the opposite. I want to see how different networks are carrying stuff and what they're saying. I know what Fox News is going to say. I got a feeling what News Nation, Newsmax, some of the others will say. I want to catch up. I know what MSNBC will say. I want to see what CNN will say, especially on the heels of last Thursday night of all of those folks on CNN who literally, I've never heard them talk like that, saying Biden was a problem. So I kind of want to see on the heels of that. I'm a media guy. Westside Jeff is the name, sitting in for Chris Crock. I love following the media and watching it. And I formulate my own opinion. I don't watch Fox and let them spoon feed me and then regurgitate it to you. That's easy. I'm not into easy. I want to see and hear what Fox says. I want to see and hear what CNN says. I want to see and hear. I watch some of the White House press briefing. And then I formulate my own opinion and I give it to you. It's about opinion. That's what talk radio is. And I'd love to hear your opinion if you want to weigh in on things I'm talking about. If you want to interact, 800-288-9227 is the phone number. Again, 800-288-WBAP. My producer, Garrett, will pick up the phone and talk to you and put you on the queue and tip me off, and we'll talk. But I'd love to hear your perspective on the chirp and peeling the onion back. This story's not going to go away. This story has shelf life. That's the interesting thing about what we're talking about. We live in a society right now where news stories have a very short attention span. Let me ask you this question. Today is July 2nd. It's Tuesday. Last Tuesday, we're talking how about last Wednesday, 6 days ago? What was the top news story 6 days ago? Do you remember? Hell, I don't. That's because we live in an era of recency of news. The stories from prior to last Thursday, the stories from yesterday are long gone because we're on to the next news item. You know what I'm saying when I'm saying that, and that is news is changing overnight. And our news focus as consumers of news, as we read it online and see it on television, hear it on radio and talk show hosts, it changes over a 24-hour period. The news cycle just changes quicker than ever before. The shelf life of news stories is shorter than ever before. And that just infuriates many in the world of politics, except for now, except for today. Because of chirp and because of onion. That onion, it's a stinky big onion. You peel it and it gets ugly. You see, they want that chirp to go away. They want that news story to be buried. They want the news to go off the front pages and out of the TV monitors that you see. But Joe Biden's appearance the other night, that wasn't a bad performance. That was more than a bad performance. That was a condition. And that was the discussion today. Moving on to Biden today. Biden today spoke and visited a new emergency operations center in D.C., getting an update from Hurricane Beryl. And while he was there, he gave a little speech about climate change. He stood in front of a podium so it protected his visuals so we couldn't see him freeze up. He had the monitors up, so he had in front of him, he had the teleprompter so he could read from it. And it's the Biden we expected to see last Thursday but never saw. His comments didn't sound anything to me like a policy comments, rather a campaign speech. He invoked the word MAGA Republicans. He invoked the name Trump a couple times. No media were allowed questions or follow-ups or any one-on-one time. This was not a campaign speech. This was not a speech from the office of the president. It was a tongue lashing at you and I, the Republicans, MAGA Republicans, and the whole climate change thing. 800-288-9227 is the number. I want to get to some calls throughout the night as you have comments and thoughts on this. Gregory, thanks for listening. You're calling from Southlake. I appreciate your ears, and I appreciate you weighing in on this. Gregory, thanks for calling WBAP. You're on with Westside Jeff. What's your thought?
Hey, Westside, nice to have you back as guest host.
Thank you.
The country really got to see the Joe Biden that the rest of us MAGA Republicans have been seeing since he took office at the debate, that is. And I mean, the guy's been bumbling around and dementia-ridden crypt keeper type behavior since he took office. And unless they drug him up, he's just a sack of oatmeal. And the country really got to see this, and it's terrifying from the standpoint of what our enemies think when they look at this. I mean, you can see China just salivating over Taiwan, perhaps, or
yes, they are.
Or North Korea looking to start something with South Korea. I mean, it's why this guy hasn't been thrown out over the 25th Amendment so far is because Kamala Harris is such a disaster. She's just the equal opportunity Democrat on the ticket last year.
Gregory, you bring up a great point of why this guy hasn't been thrown out. Let me ask you this, Gregory: who do you blame for that?
God, who do I blame for that? I blame the Congress. I blame the Democrat Party for picking such lousy candidates to begin with. I mean, I'm a MAGA Republican, so I'm 100% Trump, and I firmly believe that election was rigged. Absolutely, there's been enough evidence. There's been enough questionable activity that really needed to be looked into that was just brushed under the carpet. As far as I'm concerned, Biden's illegitimate.
Gregory, you're a smart man. I appreciate you listening, and thanks for your comments. Thanks for being part of the Westside Jeff Show tonight. I appreciate it very much. Ken in Arlington, you got a comment on this tonight. You're on WBAP.
Hey, don't you think the Democrats would be happy for this decision, this ruling? Because that means anything that Biden has done, I don't know what he's done, he's protected.
You know what, Ken? I would. Quite honestly, if I were a Democrat, if I were in the Biden White House, hell yes, I would, because it'd mean you couldn't prosecute me for open borders and all the other stuff that he's done wrong as the office of the president. So I agree with you.
Sure.
Ken,
but they're not thinking that.
Nope. Ken, thanks for listening. I appreciate your call, and you're spot on with that. That's Ken from Arlington. Thank you. Again, if you want to weigh in on this, Westside Jeff is my name. You can hit me up on social media at Westside Jeff. Pick up the phone, dial 800-288-9227, 800-288-WBAP. A moment ago, when I was just talking to Gregory, I said, Gregory, who do you blame for this? We talked about Biden's incompetencies and how he shouldn't be there and the mental faculties that he has. And he gave an answer. And Gregory, I appreciate your answer. I'm going to tell you who I blame. It's not the Congress. There's someone else to blame. And they're on display right now. We saw it today. I'll explain it in 3 minutes. My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. And for Chris Kroc on News Talk 820 WBAP and now on 93.3 FM. So I'm talking about the chirp, 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 chirp. It's that smoke detector in your home with a bad battery. In the middle of the night, it starts chirping. And you got to get up out of bed at 2 or 3 in the morning and put a new battery in to make that thing stop chirping. Or it's that moment you hear your toilet tank, the toilet tank refilling up because you got to replace that ball cock on your toilet. The more you don't do that stuff, the more it's going to be a problem and annoy you and just piss you off. Yesterday, the Supreme Court came out and stood with Trump. Judge Merchan today came out and said he's going to wait for sentencing to Trump on September 18th and wants to review all of that material to see if it truly is a crime. So he's saying it may not be a crime. And Washington's heads are just about ready to come blowing off. There's been a lot of news today out of Washington. That's what we're talking about. My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. And I took caller a moment ago, Gregory from Southlake, that he said, you know what, Jeff, on that debate Thursday night, he said, I'm a MAGA Republican and I'm Trump all the way. Gregory, you said the world got to see what we knew about Joe Biden. And you're right, and you talked a little bit about it. And I followed up with a question to you, Gregory, on this. And I posed the question to all of you. Who do you blame? Who do you blame? He was mad. Gregory was mad that the Congress hasn't done anything about the 25th Amendment and invoking the act to remove Biden from office. I said, who do you blame for that? And he said, Congress. There's someone else to blame. And I told you I'd tell you who it is. And the real culprit in that isn't the Congress. You see, the real culprit in that is the media, the national reporting media. It is the role of the media. Listen, I went to college up in Ohio. I was born in Columbus, Ohio. I went to something called Ohio University, not Ohio State, but Ohio University. It's in Athens, Ohio. It's one of the top journalism schools in the nation, along with Syracuse, Stanford, a couple others. And one of the things I learned there in ARCOM 101 is the role of the media. And that's what you got to understand about what we do in talk radio. The role of the media is to be the watchdog of the community. It's the watchdog of the government. That's what we do. Newspaper reporters 20 and 30 years ago, we used to have investigative reporting going on. We had people in the media, in the newspaper business, in television. You used to have investigative journalists on television. Radio is never as much that, because radio is more of an entertainment type medium. There really weren't investigative reporters in radio. It's not how it's set up to operate. But we had investigative reporters whose job it was to be the watchdog of the community, the watchdog of the government, checks and balances. That's not happened. You see, the media today has become the fourth estate of this Democratic government. They have covered up for Joe Biden. When Joe Biden fell up the steps and down the steps of Air Force One, you barely saw it except for Fox. You barely saw that story. If that were any Republican, let's go back prior to Trump. If that were George H.W. Bush, that would have been plastered all over your news feed for a couple days. But it was Joe Biden, so they covered it up. You see, you can't work in the White House as a reporter. You cannot be a member of the reporting media and not know that's going on. And shame on them if they are in the White House pool and they don't know what's going on. I think this has been a wake-up call for the national reporting media. I think this has been as significant of an event in my lifetime. When I tell you that this story, this political story that started last Thursday night that is processing and moving on, has become one of the biggest stories, not only political, but in the media world, that could potentially shake our country to a core, because what it did is it made fun of the media. Because we're sitting here all day long talking about how can the media not see what we see? How can they not know? How Gregory from South Lake is right. How can everybody not know and see what we see? Is it a cover-up? Is the media covering up for Joe Biden? It's a fourth estate is what it is. You see, the media has become a public relations arm of Joe Biden and his policies. They're not the watchdog of the community. They're not challenging him. But all of a sudden, last Thursday night, when Joe did what Joe did, and Trump, God loved Donald Trump. Thank God. I was horrified what Trump was going to do. He did the best thing in the world. I applaud him for that. He just shut his mouth, shook his head, had that weird look on his face. The moderator said, "What do you think of that?" And he said, "I don't know what he just said." He didn't know what he just said. I can't comment on that. That's the best thing. That was the greatest soundbite of all last Thursday night. That Trump bit his lip and didn't become narcissistic Trump. He just said, that was embarrassing. I don't know what he said. He doesn't know what he said, and I can't comment on it. That was the soundbite of the night. I'm going to continue conversation about the media. I blame the media for covering up for Joe Biden. And I'll explain it. I'll tell it. I'll tell you what happened today in Washington, because it comes into play. The media had some things to say that will surprise the hell out of you.